This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth. Today is Sunday, July the 16th, 2018. And for those of you who are involved in the cryptocurrency space, or maybe even if you're not involved and you're just been watching from a distance, you may have noticed some extreme volatility just in the last few days, certainly in the last few weeks. In fact, just as far back as just in June, the overall market cap for cryptocurrencies was at around 115 billion, and today it sits in at around just under 70 billion. So there's been a massive transfer of wealth here. And today, joining me on the line to speak about all of this, as well as digital cash, aka Dash, and how it differs from, Bitcoin and Ethereum, and how it plans to weather this storm. Joining me on the line is Joël Valenzuela. He's the editor of Dash Force News. Joël, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us here on Press for Truth.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So obviously, I want to get your thoughts on Dash and where you see the potential there. But can you first off maybe just give us your analysis on what you've been witnessing in the past few days, the past couple of weeks? A lot of first-time investors are shaking in their boots right now. So is this a time for a cause for concern, or do you see this as a much-needed correction?
I think it's a much-needed and temporary correction, right? There's this old saying in the cryptoverse, HODL, because someone on a Bitcoin talk forum one time, when the price of Bitcoin was going way down and everyone was freaking out, exclaimed hold, like hold on to your Bitcoins, but he misspelled it HODL. So now that's a common industry term, is the HODL. Yes, so HODL on, keep calm and HODL on. It was definitely in the coming. I could have seen this coming a month or so ago. Yeah, exactly.
It seems that a lot of people have been getting in on the hype, and it does seem to me that when you see that much money, a lot of people say, where did it go? That money just disappeared. Well, money never really disappears. It really just transfers hands. So it's possible a lot of anarcho-capitalists have become wealthy millionaires. It's tough to say, but in the area of Dash, how does Dash play into this, and how does it differ from other top leading cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum?
Yeah, so a little background on Dash, right? So way back, I don't remember the exact year, but Dash's founder, Evan Duffield, approached the Bitcoin core team about privacy, right? His concern was that Bitcoin, while pseudonymous, was extremely easy to trace transactions, right? You could, even though if you don't know the person behind the transactions, maybe that doesn't get you anywhere, but you can see these coins went there to there to there to there, so you could pretty much trace someone's entire financial history if you knew where they were, knew which wallet they had. So he proposed some changes, and these were not heard, so he said, I'm just going to make my own coin. So he made what was known for, I think, for a day as Xcoin, and for a while as Darkcoin, which was basically a Bitcoin, sort of like a Bitcoin knockoff with a built-in coin mixer, right, which would basically jumble transactions so that when they reach the end point, all you'd see is it's from like a million different addresses everywhere. You have no idea where it actually came from. Basically anonymizing the transactions. Mm-hmm. And then Dash just built on that to become first the rebranding of Dash to digital cash, and then a bunch of extra things got built on top of that, most notably the masternode network, which I think is one of the most important innovations in cryptocurrency.
Well, that sounds similar to, or correct me if I'm wrong, is it similar to Ethereum smart contracts, where you can essentially build on the platform moving forward? Maybe, who knows what kind of bright minds can come up with certain things. Is that similar to what you guys have done with Dash compared to what Ethereum is doing with the smart contracts?
Not actually very similar at all. Ethereum, you could build smart contracts and tokens and etc. onto the platform, but it's still a very Bitcoin-like system in how it's run, right? You got a development team. Well, they were smart and they raised a bunch of money, but you still got the development team, you got the miners, and that's how it works. With Dash, you have some extra thing called a masternode, which is basically an investor or stakeholder, right? In order to run a masternode, you need to stake 1,000 Dash, which back when I started paying attention, that was like $5,000 to $7,000. Right now, it's even at this new low point, that's like $130,000. And so you stake that to show, look, I have a lot of Dash. I actually care about what happens to the network, and I can help do a few things. So with Bitcoin, the block reward, and as far as I know, Ethereum as well. I'm not the biggest expert on Ethereum, but the block reward, right? The new coins minted from miners go 100% to the miners, right? In Dash, 45% go to the miners. 45% go to these master nodes as a reward for maintaining a node, and then 10% of this is up for grabs. It's the treasury. Okay. And the master nodes vote on where that treasury funding goes. For example, my own salary. I work for a group called the Dash Force. It's one of the 3 main organizations that are under the Greater Dash DAO, or Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And so there's about 4,500 master nodes or so, and every month or 3 months, people have to put budget proposals to say, we want some of that 10%. We think we can make a case of why we're going to provide value to Dash. And so what happens is the master nodes get together, and if a net of 10% of the master nodes, right? If no one votes no, you'd need like 450 votes. If like 100 people voted no, you'd need 550 yes votes, etc. If your proposal passes, then the money, 10% of that newly created money goes straight to you. And this is a very unique thing because, first off, it provides actual funding for developers, right? Bitcoin doesn't have anything like that. They're supposed to volunteer or, maybe get paid by some outside organization, have conflicts of interest. In Ethereum and all the Ethereum ICO projects, all this money was crowdfunded beforehand, and they're sort of living off of it, whether or not they keep on delivering, right? They have an incentive to do a big hype bubble in the beginning to get the money, and then whether or not they deliver is a little bit harder to pin them down on. So not only is our Dash's developers and people like me, are they paid regularly, but there's always the option to fire them, right? If I start messing up, I can't ride this gravy train forever, right? If I start messing up, if I'm not doing my job, too bad, I don't have a job. I have to keep on reapplying for my job every 3 months.
Right. Well, let me ask you this.
That's a pretty big thing.
Yeah, well, this raises a bit of a question for me, and I think this is a cause for concern for a lot of people, and perhaps why a lot of people got into cryptocurrencies in the first place. But just how decentralized is Dash compared to something like a Bitcoin, for example? Is it the ultimate decentralized currency, or just how decentralized is it?
I believe it is, right? Well, just because you have 45 different points of influence, right? That's pretty decentralized if you ask me. Not to mention, at present, there's still miners for Dash, right? There's still miners that are separate from master nodes. So the master nodes just sort of control the money and act as nodes and do some second layer things like, for example, the privacy and the instant transactions that are offered by Dash. But the miners still run the basic part of the network, right? And so you have this proof of service through the master nodes, right? They prove that they're invested and they prove that they are doing a service for the network. You have the proof of work, the traditional Bitcoin style mining thing going on, and then of course you have development teams, etc., who actually create the code. And even though they're accountable to the master nodes, there is still a little bit of trust. There's still some influence on their side of the spectrum because they actually provide the code. So it's a very equally balanced thing. And if you look at any major cryptocurrency, you have usually one central team working on things, right? So Bitcoin, you got Bitcoin Core. It's getting a little bit, there's been some issues with Core, so they're kind of losing a little bit of their influence lately. But for the while, it's been Bitcoin Core. You go to something like Monero, and it's got a pretty centralized team. You got to Ethereum. Basically, that's the reason there's an Ethereum Classic, is because Ethereum decided now we're just going to basically erase transactions done with when there was a large hack of what they call the DAO, and a lot of people weren't happy with that, and that's why the network split, because the developers tried to act in too centralized a way, and they didn't like that. So with Dash, not only do you have a very clear accountability board of shareholders that can help do this, but right now there's not one, but two, but three groups major groups operating under the Dash DAO ecosystem, right? You got the core team, the main developer team. You got the Dash Force that I'm a part of that acts for like media and outreach and things like that. And then you have something called Dash Labs, which is a new group founded by the founder of Dash, Evan Duffield, which is a sort of future-proofing research organization meant to look into long-term scaling the future, do research and possibly production on open source hardware specialized to run nodes to be able to scale to 4,000 transactions a second,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. So there's 3 different groups, and all of them can be fired at any one time. That's pretty decentralized, if you ask me.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like it. What I'm witnessing these days when I look into the coinmarketcap.com, for example, is often you'll see a lot of these major bloodbath crashes happening all at the same time. You'll see the page is just filled with red. And it makes me wonder about how much of these cryptocurrencies are affected by what happens with Bitcoin. And is Bitcoin the main factor here? How is Dash affected by Bitcoin? And what are your thoughts on the coming, I mean, there's talk of a potential SegWit, there's talk of a hard fork, there's a potential a deadline of August 1st, I heard. People seem to be nervous about what's happening with Bitcoin. Could that affect what's happening with Dash and all the other cryptocurrencies as well?
Yes, absolutely. So first to start with the way the market works, right? The market's not entirely rational by a long stretch right now, right? We're still in the very, very experimental, very hype-driven phase of cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin had an enormous advantage for nearly a decade, right? Bitcoin is about 9 years old now, 8 or 9 years old, and until about March of this year, it had 85% or more of the market, right, or higher. And right now it's somewhere around 47%, 48%. So what happened with that is Bitcoin got all the integrations into what some of us would call the real world, right? All the fiat gateways, all the fiat trading pairs, everything and then the rest of the cryptocurrency world flowed through Bitcoin, right? You buy Bitcoin and then trade it for other things. And so Bitcoin still has this pretty strong stranglehold on sort of real-world adoption use. Everything else is to play with. And Dash is making really very strong inroads into this, but it's still it's hard to catch up sometimes. So yes, whatever happens to Bitcoin happens to the rest of the field. That's one. The other thing is it's hard to tell because it's hard to poll people exactly on why they sell at what price or what the markets do. You can't just talk to the markets. It's not quite that simple. You can only guess. My guess is a lot of this, based on what has crashed and how, a lot of this has more to do with Ethereum than it does with Bitcoin. If you notice, Bitcoin's recaptured its recaptured part of its dominance over this crash, and Ethereum has lost some. Ethereum was on a very, very strong bull run over a lot of hype, it was very, very much touted as something that could replace Bitcoin because Bitcoin's broken. That was just the general sentiment. And Ethereum ran into some scaling issues due to these ICOs, which are on-chain token sales, right? Just like a big crowd fund. And so not only did that hit the network, some people were unable to move Ethereum transactions for like 24 hours. And I mean, Bitcoin's gotten as a whole got much worse than that, but there's never been a point where you can basically, no one can get a transaction through during that time. You could pay a very high fee and get one through. But so there was that, and also just, if you look at some of these ICOs, I mean, there was pretty much people were throwing money at anything and everything crypto. Oh, I got a new, some people even created, I unfortunately don't remember the actual name of it, but there have been some ICOs that were literally called to something to the effect of, "This is stupid, don't buy any of these tokens." And then people bought those tokens. Like it got to a stage of madness, so of course what comes up must come down. And Ethereum is the leader of what the market sort of perceives as altcoins, or alternatives to Bitcoin. That kind of pushed the rest of the market down. And also, when people are selling Ethereum, they're selling it for Bitcoin and then selling Bitcoin for cash, So that brings Bitcoin down too. So it's a pretty nice, kind of ugly domino effect there.
Yeah. Well, in the face of such volatility, for people on the outside looking in, what sort of advice might you have for people who are kind of interested, but they're looking at this going, I don't know if this is for me, if I want to put any of my savings into this. You know, what sort of advice might you have for those type of people who are interested but weary?
Yeah, so first, it's clear from all this hype and attention, it's very much like the dot-com bubble, that it's clear there's something big behind this. So whatever happens to current cryptocurrencies, that does not negate the fact that this is an amazing technology that will change the world, and it's very emergent. And if you manage to back the right players in this field, you'll be very handsomely rewarded in time. I mean, a lot of people already have been, and it's just the very beginning. So I would say don't write off the whole field. The biggest thing is do your research. A lot of people are throwing money at things that just, that looks good, I'll throw money at it. Oh, it's been doing well, I'll throw money at that. Really do your research, because there's some, I mean, that's one of the reasons that I'm behind Dash, which is not one of the more popular, hype-driven currencies out there, is because the team is a very solid offering, right? Digital cash, which is Bitcoin's original concept, but Bitcoin's kind of turned into more of a digital gold, and we still need that peer-to-peer, censorship-resistant, everyday cash that Bitcoin kind of has moved away from in recent years. And so you believe in the mission, and then the team has had Dash has been extremely drama-free, under-promise, over-deliver, has a massive team of, like, I forget how big the core team is, but it's like 60 developers or something like that, paid ones, right? So it's one of the large. In the meantime, for example, Litecoin, which is a couple steps up. I remember reading on Reddit a couple months ago that they just announced they finally got their first full-time developer. Wow. When Dash had 20 or more, or there's no competition. But of course, if you just say, oh, Litecoin's this thing's been around for a while, it's like Bitcoin, but it doesn't have the same problems, I'll throw money at that. Yeah. If you do your research, you'll be definitely rewarded long term. And the third thing is Dash actually has ways of incentivizing people to invest and not just day trade, right? So with a masternode, right? Let me actually check the actual stats right now. But with the masternode, you put $130,000 down and you just run a node, and that gets you recurring $895 per month at current rates, right? So just for life, as long as you hold on to that masternode, that's about how much you just get for helping secure the network. And of course, when the price of Dash goes up, that recurring income goes up, right? And there's some services that let you get a share of a masternode, right? Which is 25 Dash, and that would be about $20 a month extra. And that's not. You have some tokens, they appreciate. That's you have more tokens, right? And so if you invest in something like that, then you get more long term, and then if the price goes up, that really goes up. And you're seeing a whole lot of new coins come out these days that are masternode coins, to say, and some of them are marketing themselves very overtly as, you missed the Dash train, but you can get in on this one. Like, you can throw $5,000, $10,000 into this thing and just be set for life, never have to work again because you have recurring income, right? There's a lot of people did that with Dash. I know a lot of people personally who've done that with Dash because they backed the right horse. They saw long term the vision and how it would turn out. So that would be the third point, is once you've done your research, give Dash a look, because it's able to actually keep kicking you back over time.
Yeah. Sound advice. I mean, it sounds to me like Dash has essentially established itself as something a little more, solid than these ICOs popping up all over the place. Some of them are scams, who knows, but it looks like Dash is the real deal. So where can people go to learn more from you? And even if they want to get involved with Dash, how do they do so? Where do they go?
All right. Well, the main site, of course, dash.org is the Dash website, right? And it just has everything about what is Dash, how do you get a wallet, things like that. And if you want to just know more about the Dash ecosystem, etc., I would go to dashforcenews.com, which is a site that I help run as part of Dash Force. It's a news site dedicated to Dash because Dash seems to a lot of times not get enough headlines or attention from other crypto news outlets. And finally, the project we're working on, and it's not quite ready, but it's still, there's still a lot there. Discover-.com. That's a business listing of all the businesses around the world that take Dash, and right now there's 168 we've listed, and we're still pouring through we're pouring over resources to add the rest of them. Right? There's a lot more than that take Dash out there. For example, if you use a service called BitCart, which only takes Dash, you can buy Amazon gift cards for 15% off. So what can't you buy off of Amazon? You can get anything, right?
Right.
So if you go to bitcart.io, right, you can just go and shop on Amazon.com, save 15% by using Dash. And they stopped taking Bitcoin because of Bitcoin's network issues. So now it's a Dash only business, right?
Right.
Those are the main places I would direct people.
Okay, cool. Very cool. That sounds very innovative. That's bringing the cryptocurrency into the real world so that you can actually spend it in various ways. I think that's awesome. That's innovative, and that might set you guys aside. So we're definitely going to have all the links in the description for everyone to check out. Thanks so much for talking to us today, man.
Hey, no problem. Anytime.